we are very aware that each person has a unique personality. And
What?
part of how we're aware of that is how preciously annoying each other can be sometimes.
And also amazingly awesome.
Yeah, totally. So we want to devote this time to helping unpack a little bit about personality, how to embrace each other's personality. And we're using the DISC personality assessment as our basis for this week's unit.
So before we get into DISC, we think there's some very key elements that we need to keep in mind. And that is first, the perception of the person. Everyone has a perception of other people. We can't help it. We just do. When we see someone, when we talk to them, there are these things that we perceive about them, whether it's they're quiet or loud, or whether they're very studious or very free and free spirit. How they dress, their hairstyle or lack of hair, depending on the case. Obviously if they're a man or a woman, do they have a southern drawl or do they have a northern twang, whatever it might be. We make perceptions, but we don't leave it there. All these perceptions lead to judgments. Now, people say, no, I don't judge people.
Yeah, right.
Everyone judges. You can't help it. You don't stay at this very surface perception level. This person is, so you say, interesting, you've judged, right? And so when you make a judgment, you decide, do I like this person? Do I want to be around this person? And so many of these judgments are even subconscious. You're not thinking about them. You just do them. And then, so you have a perception about the person or their observable behavior. Then you're making a judgment about their assumed internal motivation. We start to look at people and go, is this person trustworthy? And the way we see it is by what we see on the outside. Here's a little thing, whether it's about your spouse or anyone else. You will never know a person's internal motivation. No matter how long we're married, we'll never truly know what motivates each other on the inside. All we can know is the observable behavior or our perception of that person. And that's what's going to then lead us to making the decision. So what we want to caution you on is making that judgment too soon. So many people are a little bit different when you first get to know them, and then they let their guard down a little bit, and they may be very different. And so what we want to do before we get into the DISC is set that groundwork for you. Don't pigeonhole someone just as you get to know them, or as you first meet them. This should be developed over time the longer you get to know somebody. But then the DISC can be very beneficial.
The reality is, even your spouse might be different than what you thought. You could look at DISC and go, oh, well, I know my spouse is this. But it could be that that's something that you've perceived, that you've judged that to be, that's who they are or how they are, and they might not be that as much. Now, we hope that you know the personality of your spouse. But I just want to recognize that over time, and as people drift and go through different seasons, sometimes we do misread even each other. So DISC is a powerful assessment. It's intended to be simple. It's 4 quadrants. But before we go to the 4 quadrants, let's think about it as major axes. The 2 top sections of personality are both active. They are both you moving forward, you're telling someone about your day, you're taking initiative. That's the D and the I. The bottom are more reserved. The S and the C are more cautious. They're more likely to ask questions than to put themselves out there. They're more likely to read the room, kind of watch things before they jump in.
Yeah, and the whole thing is a spectrum, right? I mean,
It really
so
is.
as some people go, well, sometimes I'm this, sometimes I'm that. Well, you're maybe closer to the midpoint on that spectrum. So you may probably can easier to think of people that are kind of at the very ends, these different peaks, whether they're active or whether they're reserved. But it is a spectrum, and you may be a little bit closer to that, again, that midpoint. Because in the other axis is the horizontal, which is whether you're task or relationally motivated. This is how you view success. Now, I say this, and there will be a segment watching that will know exactly what I mean when I say this. That if there's a list that you've made to get things done for your day, and it maybe has 10 things on it, and you got 9 things done, that's not success. Because there's one thing left. And you're like, I've got to get this thing done before I go to bed at night. This is my wife. And the task is not bad. In fact, it's very important to be task-focused because it allows you to be moving forward and completing those tasks, and that's how you view success. Well, then on the other extreme of the spectrum is relational. Now, relational people view success of how is the relationship going? Are we doing well? Are we connected? Are we disconnected? We need to work on that. And then the task is secondary. Now, task people see the relationship as a task to be completed. Relational people see the task as something that will help build those relationships. And so when you look at that horizontal,
which one's right?
They both are. None of this is good or bad. It's just what you do with it that matters.
And how you judge each other for how you're thinking about it. Oh, you're thinking about it all wrong. That's not the right way. Well, we're all created differently.
Exactly. So if I'm saying, don't be so focused on the task, I'm telling someone your view of success is not good. And that's not good. Or if someone's saying to me, don't be so focused on this relationship, let's get stuff done. Well, then they're shutting me down, and I don't see success as beneficial.
Now, Scott and I have studied this for years, and we have been certified in this DISC assessment, and we still are learning how to dance around each other with this sort of thing, acknowledging when a certain part of our personality flares up and becomes incredibly strong in any kind of given situation, especially in conflict. You'll see this.
Well, and we're not going to get too into this right now, but if you listen to our podcast, it goes into a lot more detail, that about 85% of the population doesn't fall into only one category. They fall into multiple categories. And so depending upon all these other factors are where I'm going to be really activating in my DISC.
So today we're just going to focus on the stereotypes. And so let's look at each of these four just so you have an understanding about what they are. The first one is D. They're in the active and in the task quadrant. So when you put that together, it's ask. Anyway. And then the drivers are about 10% of the population. And we like to joke it's because you couldn't handle more than 10% of the population to be Ds. They're dominant. They're drivers. They get things done. The I is active but very relational. And so the Is, they're influencers. And they inspire other people to follow them. They have followers. And they're great for being in charge of social activities.
And they're about 25% of the population there. And so they're like the drivers, where they're both active, but the difference would be the driver's task, the I is relational. And so they view success differently. They can appear very similar maybe at first, but you'll know very quickly the differences. Well, then our last two quadrants move into a reserved vertical. And those would be, the first is our S. Our S are the stable people, the specialists. They're going to get things done through the relationship. They're going to have deep relationships. And they're about 40% of the population. So almost half the people you meet are going to be in the S quadrant. They're going to be thinking through how can we have unity and be combined, and almost that kumbaya moment that we sometimes talk about. And then the final category is our C. Our C's we always save for last because they're analyzing everyone else to know, am I really a C? And yes, you are if you've done that. Our C's really focus on being constructive. They want to get things done. They want to construct something that's beautiful. And it's going to take some time to get done, but they want to do it well. And they're going to be very back. In fact, we say their happy space is when they're in the weeds and no one's bugging them. And they're about 25% of the population. So, they're about a quarter of the people you meet, although you may not know them because they're not wanting to talk to you. They're going to be your C's.
So you have yourself that you're kind of self-reflecting, identifying where you might be. You also got your spouse that you're trying to kind of identify where they are, and you want to hear where they think they are. And then we have to be honest, you've got this group dynamic, and you're probably going to be noticing some people in your small group and what personality they might be as well. But we hope you enjoy studying this and then discussing this week.